said, I'm super excited to introduce Prashant from Applied Information Science to have this amazing session. Take
Thank
right
you.
ahead. Thank you.
Welcome everyone to the session titled Data Science and Machine Learning with Microsoft Fabric. So what we are going to cover today is, we will start with why traditional machine learning is still important. Like most of us is hearing about AI agents or generative AI or large language model a lot, but there is still a play for our traditional machine learning model. And then we'll start with what is Microsoft Fabric, how Microsoft Fabric can support you with your machine learning models and data science journey. Then we will go with the demo. I will show you an experiment where we'll be using notebooks in Fabric, and we'll run through the experiment using multiple models. And then we will select the best of the model, and then how we can consume that model once it's deployed in Fabric. Towards the end, we'll also talk about Fabric's data agent as well. So let's take a look at why traditional ML is still important. Even though there's a more and more push for generative AI, there are a lot of edge cases where traditional ML is still relevant. Like for example, you want consistent results. You want low latency results. You want to have efficient compute because most of this large language model requires a really, really beefy infrastructure, whereas a traditional machine learning we can run on edge devices as well. One of the thing is, reproducibility. That's where traditional ML really help, and also regarding the feature attribution as well. So, in case you have a use case where you want to use or run traditional machine learning models, these are some of the options available to us. Like the services that you can use is out of this is you can run those models on Foundry. You can also do that on Fabric, and of course, you can also use all the open source product as well. In this particular talk, we'll be focusing only on Microsoft Fabric. So what is Microsoft Fabric? It's Microsoft Unified Data Platform for AI Transformation. It is a software as a service offering from Microsoft. Anyone can use Fabric. Fabric is huge. There are lots and lots of different services available. We have Data Factory, we have analytics, you have databases, you can do real-time intelligence. We also have something called IQ, and you have OneLake, and we can also apply your traditional security and governance policies as well. When it comes to Fabric, there are multiple roles or multiple people with multiple skill set will be using Fabric. What we'll be focusing on is mostly on data scientists or machine learning engineers. Like traditionally, what we have seen is the data engineers will be responsible for building, managing, and securing your data pipelines. Okay, that's going to ingest your data. That's going to store your data from various sources, in Data Factory or data warehouses. Whereas the data scientists or machine learning engineers will be applying the advanced statistics and machine learning techniques to the data that you already have. Now, when it comes to machine learning model, these are some of the popular machine learning models that are available in Fabric. Like, for example, classification, which can help you in terms of predict a categorical value, like whether a customer may churn or not. You can also use regression as well, clustering, and forecasting as well. And this is like the high-level process or steps that you will be using when it comes to using data science. Like, first, you define a problem. And like, what is your problem that you're trying to solve? The next step will be then, where is your data? Get that data, and then next is then prepare your data for your experimentation. Then the next step is number 4 step, which is we'll be running like multiple experimentation where you train your model. And once you might identify what model you'll be using, then you'll be using that model in the application of your choice. Like for example, let's take example, your executives are looking at a dashboard in Power BI, and they identified, okay, we need to solve this problem, or we need to do some prediction on this particular data. The next step that you'll be doing is then get that data into the Lakehouse, okay? And once your data is in the Lakehouse, the next step will be then is you prepare your data for your experimentation, and then you use your notebooks to run a series of experimentation on your data. Once your experiments are done, then you figure out or find out what is the best experiment or the model that's giving me better result. Then you deploy that model inside Fabric. And the last step is basically use that model to generate the insights. Again, I'm showing you here the example of Power BI, but once the model is generated, you can consume that model in any platform or any language of your choice as well. Now with that, let's go to a demo. So what the demo that I will be showing you is let's say you are a healthcare analyst, and your team is building a model to predict a quantitative measure for diabetes progression, okay? And they need to compute linear regression against decision trees, track whether feature matter most, and ensure the best model is used or safe for clinical validation. And for that, you'll be using MLflow. If you don't use MLflow, then what you're looking at is you manually running series of experiments. You're keeping the log of that, and then finally figuring out which particular experiment gave me the best result, and then use that experiment to deploy your model. So with that further ado, what I will do is I will switch the context, and I will go to my notebook. Looks like the notebook is not there, so let me just quickly fix that real quick. Okay. Okay, perfect. All right, we are back in the business. Okay, I need to look at this particular screen. All right, so let me zoom this a bit so people in the back can see it. How many of you are seeing the Fabric notebook for the first time? Okay, I see a lot of hands. Okay, so let's start with a lakehouse, like workspace first. And when you click on a new item, there are a lot of different things you can create in Fabric. Notebook is one of that. So if I click on all items, what you will see here is multiple things I can create. I can create a dashboard. I can create a data agent. I can also create the notebook. And we have already created a notebook here. And I'm just going to run through that real quick. So let me first find out this notebook. Perfect. So this is the notebook that we'll be using. And what I have done is the first thing we are doing is we are getting the data that is publicly available. So this particular data set is already available on Azure Blob Storage. Anyone can use it for the experimentation purpose. So we're pulling that data. That means one of the key features with Fabric is no matter where your data is, you can use that data for your experimentation. I don't have to manually copy that data or into the Fabric. So first thing first, so we are copying that data. And then once that data is there, the next step we are doing is we are displaying that data frame, okay? But one other thing is this data frame that we loaded is loaded as a Spark data frame. The next thing we want to do is we want to use the scikit-learn, and scikit-learn expect the pandas data frame. So here, using these functions, we are converting that into the pandas. And once the pandas are generated, if I scroll down, then we are splitting the data for 70% training and 30% test. So I have a huge data set. I want to split for 70% training. And once that training is done, the next 30% I want to use for the validation. So once that is done, the next thing I'm going to do is start training a linear regression model. And this is where you will be going into the experimentation phase now. Like your data is there. Now, depending on your use case, you may be learning a linear regression model or any other model of your choice. So you're going through the multiple experimentation phase right now. So first thing I'm going is a linear regression model. And once that is run, then I will going with the decision tree regressor as well. Once that is done, then I'm listing all the experiments that I have done with this notebook, okay? And if you see here, the experiments that we are doing, you can see the names of that. So the experiment name is experiment diabetes. So that is the experiment that I'm using. And inside that experiment, I'm running using multiple machine learning models of my choice. So once that is done, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to listing all the experiments that I have done so far. So these are the 3 experiments I have run: experiment diabetes, diabetes classification, and diabetes regression. And then after that, I'll be retrieving a specific experiment that I would like to focus on. Once that is there, then I will be retrieving all the runs for that experiment. And from that run, or from evaluating those runs, I will see which particular run is giving me the best result. And I can then use that experiment and deploy that as a model. So these are the different, the experiments I had. And then I just want to have the most 2 recent runs that I will be using. And once that is there, the next thing I'm doing is I'm visualizing the model comparison for that. And once I have enough data points and I'm in a position now, my experimentation is done, now I need to generate a model from it. So what I can do is I can go back to my workspace here. and then go to my experiment. And this is the experiment that we ran, database classification. And here I can see all the previous runs that I have there. And I can select a specific run. And here you will see an option to save this as a model. So using this option, I can save this particular experiment as a model. So let's see, let's give it as a new name. I'm going to call it as build 26 model 01. And then I can select a specific folder and save. And once the model is saved, let me go back to my workspace real quick and arrange everything by the model over here. And this is the model that I have created. So I can go here. I can open this model over here. I can see various statistics for this model. I can also have the versioning as well. I can also have download the version files. But one key feature of Fabric is creating the model is one thing, but how I will make sure that someone else can use this model. So if I go on the settings for this model over here, so this is where you'll see the information about the model. I can have the name of the model. I can have the description. And if I click on the endpoints, this is where I can capture the endpoint. So now my model is there. It's deployed in Fabric. And I can now start consuming this model in the platform or programming language of my choice. Let's go back to our notebook. And I will be running this experimentation now one by one. So one thing that you'll see in the notebook is I can use different Spark environments to run this notebook. Like for example, by default, the PyPark Python is selected, but I can also use Spark Scala. I can also use Spark SQL and Spark R as well. So let's first make sure we're getting the data from the blob storage. All right, looks like the data is there. The next thing I'm going to do is displaying the data in the data frames. All right, it's done as well. And the next thing I'm going to do is convert this into the pandas data frame. All right. And then here I will start creating this experiment. This is already created, so I'm not going to create this again. But what I will do is I will just going to start the experimenting with linear regression model over here. All right, looks like this run is also finished now. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the decision tree regressor. All right, this is done. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to list all the experimentation that I have done. Perfect. That is done as well. And then retrieve the most recent one. And get all the experiments with that particular ID. The list is really long. And then order by the start time and limit just to 2. And then finally, I will do the visualization. Okay. So this is regarding running your traditional machine learning workloads in Fabric. But how about you also want to use something like a generative AI as well in Fabric? How you can do that? So for that, there is something called data agents in Fabric. So let me go back to the slides. Let me minimize this. So Fabric Data Agent is one of the features available inside Fabric, where if your data is in OneLake, you can use or you can execute your queries in the natural language. And behind the scene, the Fabric Data Agent will convert your queries based on the instruction that you have provided into the corresponding SQL statements and then give you the information back. Okay? And once your agent is created, you can then access that agent as an MCP server endpoint. You can also deploy that agent on M65 Copilot. You can also do an integration with Microsoft Foundry as well as Copilot Studio as well. So without further ado, what I'll do is I'm going to go to the Fabric again. And let me go back to my workspace. And let me arrange everything by So this is the data agent that I have created. You can also click on the new item here. And you can filter by agent. And let me select all. All right, and then search agent. All right, so this is what you need to select. There is also another operational agent is there, which is under preview, which you can use to monitor the real-time data and recommend recommended business action. So in our case, I'm going to go with the sales data agent. And the use case here is we have a lot of sales data in the form of tables, okay? And what I want to do is every morning, let's say someone from my sales representative, sales department, would like to generate some insights from the data. Without this data agent, my current process is they have some certain set of questions. They will be sending that question to a DBA, and that DBA will be running series of SQL statements, generate the stats, and finally share that with, let's say, the sales executive. That's a very long and tedious process. How we can solve those kind of problems? So here, first thing first, if I go into the data tab, I can add multiple data sources. So I can also add something called Azure AI Search. So if you're familiar with Microsoft Foundry, there is a service called Foundry IQ or Azure AI Search, where you can index a lot of enterprise data sources. You can bring the data from there, or you can also use the data sources that are already available inside your Fabric. So for example, I already have this particular warehouse added, data agent lab. And let me quickly show you what exact information that we have. So in this particular warehouse, I have 4 tables, like the customer information and a lot of different products that I have, and also corresponding information about those products. So I already added that as my data source over here. And if I go to the setup, I can click on the agent instruction. And what you see here in the middle section is the instruction that I have given to my agent. Again, these instructions are, you had to give it just like you're writing a system prompt for your agent. The more descriptive or more detailed instructions you have, the better results you will get with your data agent. You can write this instruction in the markdown format, and you can see the corresponding results in the below as well. And once that is done, the next thing is then in the test pane here, you can start running the experimentation. Like for example, let me rerun this question one more time. Like, what are the top 10 most popular products of all time? Let me just clear the chart history and fire up this question over here. So now to get this information, what the data agent will be doing is, based on the user query and based on the instruction, it's going to run the analysis against all this data tables that we have added. And behind the scene, it's constructing the SQL queries on the fly, and it will be running those SQL queries. And whatever the response from the SQL queries are coming back, the agent will again then go through the post-processing step. Well, based on my question and based on the instruction of my agent, it will be finally showing me the results. So if you're interested how exactly the sausage was made, you can click on expand over here, expand response. And you can see here, this is the data that came back, and these are the steps your agent has done behind the scene. So if I expand this, these are the SQL queries that the data agent has fired up behind the scene. And this was the output of the SQL queries were there. And finally, based on my instructions and based on my query, it came back with this kind of answer over here. Now my data agent is working as expected. Now the next step is I had to publish this agent. Like for example, if I go to the publish, this is where you can provide the description of the agent. Another feature set you will see that is, I can also make this agent available, like Fabric data agent available inside my Microsoft 365 Copilot as well. So my users can just mention that agent and start interacting with that. And once I publish, and if I go to the settings pane, this is where I'll be seeing the name of the data agent. I'll be seeing the description. And once the agent is published, this agent is also available as an MCP endpoint. For example, you want to consume this agent, but you don't want to consume this on Microsoft 365 Copilot. You want to use your own open source framework, or you want to use your own custom app to do that. All you have to do is you have to make the call to this custom MCP server URL that you can use. Another way for consuming this agent is I can also add this agent inside Copilot Studio. So Copilot Studio is one of the SaaS product that is available within Microsoft ecosystem, where you can create multi-agent solutions. And if I click on add an agent, there are various ways I can add agent. I can also create another child agent inside Copilot Studio. If I expand this, I can also bring the agent that are created using Fabric as well, along with some other options. So if I click on the Fabric, I had to create a connection. And once I create the connection, then based on the connection I have created, whatever the Fabric data agent that user have access to, I can bring in and start using that inside my Copilot Studio agent as well. Another way to do that is I can also create an agent in Foundry. And inside the Foundry, I can also add that data agent as a knowledge source as well. So the beauty of this is I can create my agent once, and I can consume that across multiple different products or services. With that, we come to an end. If you have any follow-up question, please reach out to me. These are my contact details, and this QR code will take you directly to my LinkedIn profile. With that, thanks for joining, and have a wonderful rest of the conference, and safe travels.